chambers. If you would now please join me in rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Pat.
Granquist?
Here.
Lange?
Here.
Merrill? Weeblehouse?
Here.
Murin?
Here.
Jackson?
Here.
Clausen?
Here.
Pyle?
Here.
With that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
Would then look for a motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second. Motion second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
That takes us to page 5 of your council agenda, special presentations, item number 29, a proclamation for August 4th through 10th, 2019 as National Health Center Week. Whereas Midtown Health Center has been a tremendous asset to our community for over 20 years by providing quality health services to the citizens of the greater Norfolk area. In 2018, Midtown served more than 6,300 patients, and Midtown Health Center, as a community health center, serves as a critical component of the safety net program by providing access to care for our most vulnerable populations. 96.2% of its patients are low income, and 39% of its patients are uninsured. And Midtown Health Center continues to be an economic driver, contributing $10.8 million to the area's economy with $6 million in direct spending and $4.8 million in community spending. And Midtown Health Center contributes significant savings with 24% lower costs for Medicaid patients, resulting in $4 million in savings to Medicaid and $10 million in savings to the overall health system. The Midtown Health Center is on the front line of emerging healthcare crisis, providing access to care for our veterans, addressing the opioid epidemic, and responding to public health threats in the wake of natural disasters such as the flooding that occurred last spring. And during National Health Center Week, we celebrate the legacy of America's health centers and their vital role in shaping the past, present, and future of America's healthcare system. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Josh Moaning, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim August 4th through 10th, 2019 as National Health Center Week in the City of Norfolk, and encourage the citizens of Norfolk and our neighboring communities to join me in celebrating the important partnership between Norfolk and our community health center, the Midtown Health Center. I believe we have Kathy Nordby, Director of Midtown Health Center, here to receive the proclamation. Kathy, please come forward. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work that you and your organization does. You're welcome to address the council.
Thank you for this. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilman, for hearing me. I'll just take a couple of minutes. I know you have a busy agenda, but I wanted to thank you for joining me in this celebration. 10 years ago, which is what we're capturing this as, we became a federally qualified health center. At that first year in 2008, we saw 9,400 patients and delivered, let's see how many patients, 2,500 patient visits. Last year in 2018, as the mayor said, we saw 6,000 patients and delivered over 20,000 different encounters for these patients. And so what's unique about us is that we deliver medical care, behavioral health services, and oral health services. And so at this time, we have our main location down at 3rd and Phillip. We have another one at 9th and Norfolk Avenue. We have a mobile dental unit that is a fully equipped 2-operatory dental unit that travels the area. And we have a clinic in Madison. And so I did bring information. I'll put this at the back. So we have information about our clinic. I think some of you have read our new partnership with Norfolk Public Schools, where we're putting a behaviorist in every elementary school for 4 hours a week. And that's, as they really think we can make a bigger difference for our students and early success and better education for those kids and overall family success. So there's information about our overall counseling and therapy services, but we even have parent-child interactive therapy services, which are, they're building a special facility in the new child care center with the Norfolk Public Schools. It's a very unique type of therapy, and so we're very proud of that. And any of the providers in town that offer parent-child interactive therapy can do that. But if you have kids, and I have 4 kids, and every time I had to gain some skills with this new kid that I had, and sometimes you just need that extra counseling and therapy support to help have a professional help you develop the skills to deal with children. And it's most effective from 2 to 7 years of age. So putting it in a preschool, child care center, it's like kudos to Norfolk Public Schools for having the vision to do that. But I wanted to share all these things with you. Specifically, I wanted to give each of you a fact sheet to take with you, just to talk and re-emphasize the economic driver that we are to the community, our growth. And I wanted to emphasize that among our peers in the nation, there's 1,300 of us in the nation, we're able to achieve overall quality in the top 10%. And I'm very proud of that. I don't do that. They don't let me deliver services directly, but I have a great provider team, second to none in the state, but for sure in Northeast Nebraska. And I'm very proud of the people that I work with. So I wanted to make sure that you had this. And as you said, we serve a large part of the uninsured. That's who I target. And I get requests from GAP services where we can deliver care and make those unique things that happen. So we go to the vet's home, we deliver oral health care. I go out to the regional center and deliver oral health care. I have a relationship with the Ponca tribe of Nebraska where I go on site to help them. We just fill those places where they need help. And I do everything I can that we can to make a difference. So, and with people like you supporting me, it helps us get our job done. So thank you. I would answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Kathy? Doesn't look like it, but Kathy, again, I wanted to say thank you for all the work that you do. We don't talk about it enough, but I think we are very fortunate to have not only one of the best community health centers in the state, but in the Midwest, proven by the numbers that you talked about tonight. And you do fill a lot of gaps in the community, and it's been gratifying having some experience with your organization as a board member a few years back to see the growth that's occurred, the growth that was necessary to meet the demand in the community. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for having a mindset toward growth to meet those needs.
Thank you. I want to welcome each of you to an open house that we're having next Tuesday from 7 to 8:30. Just brief, but you can do a walkthrough to our new facility. We just did an upgrade last year. It's a remodeling, and so it looks different. You can see how integrated healthcare works. You can get oral services with behavioral services while going to see your regular doctor. So please take the time to come, just a few minutes to walk through the facility. It's not significant.
Turned out very nice. Thank you, Kathy.
Can I put these, like, would you pass those through, or?
Yeah, you bring them.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, we move on to the public hearings and related action portion of the agenda. Item number 30, I will open this public hearing at the request of John and Amber Amick to consider a zoning change from A, agricultural district to RR, rural residential district, on property generally located a quarter mile east of 61st Street and West Omaha Avenue. And to open the hearing, Val, could you give us a little background, please?
Yes, thank you. This piece of property is generally located in the northeast area of South 61st Street and West Omaha Avenue. A couple years ago, you got split off a portion of this larger piece of property for the existing farmhouse that was there. And now the owner is coming back and requesting another portion be platted off. But because we changed agricultural zoning to be a 40-acre lot here about a year or so ago, They do not want 40 acres, they want more along the lines of 20 acres, so that is the reason for the RR zoning request instead of ag.
Okay, thank you, Val. Any questions for Val on that? Okay, this is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment on this can do so now.
All right. Good afternoon, folks. Just wanted to kind of clarify and, of course, answer any questions that you all have about this as well. Yeah, had we done this a year ago, we
Dave,
wouldn't be
can you
having this.
state your name for
Oh,
the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please?
Hi, Dave Amick, and John is the legal name, so that's why I might have confused some of you. But my wife and I purchased this property about 4 years ago, not quite 4 years ago now, and as we heard, we did separate off 10 acres with the existing old farmstead and the barns and such to make it a nice place, because I bought it purely for my cattle operation and nothing else. And there is a little bit of farm ground on there and some hay ground as well. So at any rate, there were a couple of 5-acre lots on the corner of 61st and Omaha Avenue that we had there that we could sell. Those are not listed for sale. I had kind of chosen to not sell those at this time by any means. This property is really not conducive for development in any way, shape, or form, so I do want to point that out. I know that was with the Planning and Zoning Commission, that was one of the questions they'd had. We've gone through this already. Just when we were trying to do the 10-acre sell-off of the house, we kind of had this discussion with the council that in order to do anything out there, we are in a wellhead protection area, so remember that's only 4 septics per 40 acres. So, or is that right? Yeah, 4 per 40, I believe. So for that standpoint, this is not a conducive piece of ground to develop. And not only that, you know, from some of the flood zone areas and such, also not a conducive place to start a housing development. So I just kind of want to quash any ideas that I have of doing that. That's never been the intention with this ground. I don't have the capital to go in and do a zoning change for the whole piece of ground and do all the necessary work. So bottom line is, Alex Weaver and his wife and kids, they would like to make this their homestead. And so the reason for the 23.88 acres is simply that's how it lays out. They're taking advantage of some existing tree lines that are there. So basically it's just the outside of those tree lines. For my purposes, the only reason I even really thought this might be a good idea is because it's, for me, the least productive piece of ground. It doesn't really work very much for me on the cattle side of things. So when we got to talking about it, and I said, you know, if I am going to sell any off, this would probably be where I would do it. As far as the housing area around that, it's all acreages of 10 or more acres around the area, so it conforms with what's going on. We've spoken with all the neighbors. They're in favor of it. They think it's a great plan. The house will be set back behind the trees, well off the road, won't have any bearing on the landscape around whatsoever. And I think it's a good use of this particular piece of property on the original farm that we had. So that is our plans with it, and I have no intention of selling it anymore because I need it for the cattle I'm running and everything else that I have going on. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, off that.
Okay?
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Again, this is a public hearing, so anyone else wishing to make comment on the matter can do so now. Seeing and hearing no one. Planning Commission report, please, Beth.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on July 16, 2019, at the request of John and Amber Amick to consider a zoning change from A, agricultural to RR, rural residential, on property generally located 1/4 mile east of 61st Street and West Omaha Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the request on an 8-0 vote.
Okay, thank you, Beth. With that, I will close the hearing and move to item number 31. I would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5622, approving a zoning change from A to RR zoning classification on property generally located a quarter mile east of 61st Street and West Omaha Avenue.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of ordinance number 5622 on first reading.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion, council, or further questions on this? Okay. If not, short title, please, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5622 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, considering there's no controversy or opposition, I would move to suspend the rules and pass on second and third.
Motion and second to suspend the rules. Any further discussion? If none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5622 carries on second and third.
Okay, that moves us to our regular agenda, item number 32. Entertain a motion to consider approval of an agreement for the mayor to sign all associated documents with the state of Nebraska and Motorola Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $2,376,393.28, which includes $1,507,033.47 for the replacement of existing city radios, dispatch consoles, and radio system infrastructure that will fully integrate into the statewide radio system, as well as an additional 10-year system warranty for a total warranty period of 11 years.
Your Honor, I'd move for approval of that agreement.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. To kick off discussion on this, Lyle, Shane, some background, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Kind of excited to be up here, actually. This has been a accumulation of a lot of years' work by public safety and public works staff. City staff's been watching the end of our life cycle on our current radio system, operating with disparate systems across the region, and watching the statewide radio system begin to blossom a bit. And this radio system addresses all of those circumstances. So we're excited. We're excited that we've had put a lot of work into really evaluating systems. This isn't your grandpa's radio system. This is a digital IP-based system that fully integrates with the statewide radio system. Its core, its guts, its brains basically will operate out of Lincoln, Nebraska, with backup in Kearney, Nebraska. And it'll put us in a position to be completely 800 megahertz joined system here with the state and internally, because actually we're 800 megahertz here, but we're not completely joined. Fire's operating on a conventional 800 system. Public Works and the police department are operating on a analog 800 megahertz system that the two systems can monitor each other a bit, but don't fully integrate. This system will fully integrate, not only locally, but with the State Patrol, Madison County Sheriff, NPPD, the Department of Roads, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to managing an emergency operation or managing any kind of a major event that calls for additional resources coming to our community, fluid communication is ideal and really a necessity for successful outcomes. So we're looking towards the future with that, and really believe that this system is going to give us the tools we need to do that very thing. When you take State Patrol coming to town and they can see the police officers across the street, but they can't directly communicate with them, that's a frustration that we've experienced for many, many years here in Norfolk, and other agencies have as well. So expensive, I understand. $1.5 million for the system itself is expensive, but again, this is a state-of-the-art, first-class system that's going to operate and function well for the entire city for years to come. We're currently, the conventional system that fire has is a 1991, 92 vintage. The analog system that PD and Public Works has a 1995, 96 vintage. So we've gotten a good use out of that system. It's just time to update, and this system will do that for us. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. We got Public Works and Public Safety staff here. We do have the vendor here and with us as well. But we're looking forward to kicking the tires on this system as soon as possible.
Thank you, Shane. Any questions?
Shane, how long, this isn't just something the staff's thought about or the city
No,
in
it's
the last
not.
year? how long has this process
Really,
been going on?
to be honest with you, we've, in earnest, really have started the discussions internally here in 2015. We've been watching the statewide radio system and have been partners in that process, using Homeland Security dollars with the state way before then. Going back to 2002, 2003 timeframe, the city of Norfolk was one of the major players in helping to push for a statewide radio system being developed and pushed out. We're just unfortunately, we're just getting to that point as a state now. So this system will help the state of Nebraska as well. So this has been something that we've looked at for a long time. It's complicated, ever-changing, really, it seems like, but as we kind of deciphered all the bells and whistles and the abilities of this system, we came to this conclusion here tonight that's before the mayor and council.
And Shane, isn't it true that the state system itself is fairly new?
It
We
is.
would be the second community on.
Yeah, Lincoln,
to join?
the city of Lincoln is just in progress. They haven't quite completely flipped the switch. Lancaster County that has with the statewide radio system, but we'll be first, to my knowledge, the first class city that is fully integrated with the statewide system. We are going to be on 800 megahertz, and the reason we are, and Lincoln is, and larger cities are, is because that frequency gives you great penetration in building coverage. So when the officers or the firefighters are responding to the emergency and they need to communicate inside the bowels of any building that we have in town, we got good penetration with 800 megahertz. The statewide radio system is a VHF system, which gives you good topography and good geography, expands out a larger footprint, if you will. Since this is IP-based and the technology is available now that can combine those systems, we'll be able to roam in and out of our coverage footprint right into the state's coverage footprint, which is the state of Nebraska, seamlessly. Our radios would do that automatically, actually, right on our hip or in our vehicles. Not that we do a lot of that, but we do, the fire department does some of that. They roam outside of their footprint sometimes when they're going to mutual aid calls. But for instance, I could be sitting in Lincoln, Nebraska after this system is up and running and monitoring a major event back here or having the ability to communicate back here directly with the radio. So it's pretty impressive from that standpoint. Now, we don't do a lot of that, but the technology and the capability of this system are such that it'll allow us to do that. So that's kind of exciting. What I really get excited about is thinking about those operational periods where we have an incident where someone's barricaded in a home, for instance, or we have a large mutual aid fire, and we can communicate directly with each other. That's a big deal, a huge deal, because communication is what makes and breaks you. There's no more yelling across the street, trying to get your point across, and we or the state patrol or the Madison County Sheriff, as we get this implemented, will be able to fluidly do that. And as a bonus, Madison County has recently went with, they're signing up with a statewide radio system as well. Ours is a little different, but the system's a little bit different, but we're still standalone from the city's perspective, but we'll still, again, be able to integrate those two systems just seamlessly. So it's pretty exciting.
Shane, for the last 30 years, we've had systems that can't talk to each other, and this will enable
For sure.
to have that smooth, basically going from a bag phone to a smartphone.
Yes, for sure. Good analogy.
Good analogy. Yeah, and that's a big deal. I know a lot of research and homework went into this on the part of the staff, and it was a long process, but when you're talking about this kind of investment, that's necessary research, and I commend the staff for really treating this thoughtfully, carefully, comprehensively, and I think we came to the right decision here. That seamlessness that you mentioned, Shane, is, I think, priority number one, and being in front of the game on this also potentially positions us as a regional center for dispatch opportunities and information
Absolutely,
management
Mayor.
in the
Absolutely.
future.
Thank you for bringing that up. In fact, I failed to mention that, and that's a big thing that you just mentioned there. As you look towards the future of limited resources in government, local or state or federal, for that matter, but just here for state and local government, limited resources, this system will position us well. Norfolk, in my mind, I think, in a lot of folks' mind, is geographically positioned in northeast Nebraska. We're looked to try to be a good leader and a good partner, and we try to do that in everything that we do as a community. And when it comes to public safety and public works, and in particular public safety communications, we got a state-of-the-art dispatch center with very well-trained dispatchers in a hardened facility. So we become attractive for regionalization of the dispatch center at some point, in my mind. And that's something that we look towards trying to provide. We do that with some of our regional partners now, but as the PSC looks towards regionalization across the state, this radio system will position the city of Norfolk in a great spot to be able to provide those kind of services. So,
Shane, about how long do you think it'll take to implement the system?
well, we have goals. We wanted to have it done actually last year. I set a goal with the staff to get it done. But as research went on and our due diligence went on, I would love to have it up and operational by the first of the year. I know functionally and physically we can have the equipment placed, our tower built. That's going to be going up very soon, anytime now. And then, I know we're going to have delivery of the equipment by end of September. But then the hard work begins. There's a lot of fleet mapping that goes into it, and without boring you with all the details of that, that's the integration with the state of Nebraska to try to make sure all those frequencies come together so we have a footprint out there when we access the statewide radio system and they access our system. So that is pretty solid. There's a lot of work to be done, which is just communication back and forth and agreements to address all those things. And the state director, Mike Jeffries, would say that's where a lot of your work and time will come from. But we'll have Motorola with us during that process, and they've been through it before. The state's been through it before with the city of Lincoln. So if everything goes from my crystal ball, January 1st, and I hope that's the case, but I can't promise you for sure.
Thank you.
So Shane, as far as, the price that was settled at here, and these were months of negotiations, correct?
They were.
To get to where we had to be.
They were, absolutely. We looked at another proposal as well, and really had to dig deep into the details, as the mayor indicated we should. When we're spending these kind of precious resources, we really did. So we are able to get to a position where we're getting the tools we need in this proposal at the right price point that it was a benefit to all involved.
Thank you.
I'm understanding that part of that money is going towards updating down the road too?
Yeah, a major portion of it. I mean, the first year cost is the 1.57,000, just over $1.5 million, and then there's a maintenance contract that we sign that's long-term that puts us in an upgrade position with the state of Nebraska and with our system. So our system will always be state-of-the-art because of that agreement we're signing, and it's expensive as well, but it's a requirement of joining the statewide radio system. We're not alone in that, and it updates our software. This is all software-based now. It's a new digital system, so it brings all our whole system updated every 2 years. So we will be where we need throughout the course of this agreement, which will be 11-year period for sure, just by signing this contract tonight. And then 11 years from now, we'll see where we're at with that. But it's something we can continue on to do as well.
And Shane, the budgeting of this, since we've known for some time, we'd be needing to enter a new system. Public safety divisions have been budgeting for a
Public
number of
safety,
years
public works
to
has
pay
been
for
on our
this.
capital improvements program, Mayor, so the dollars are in the budget for those first year costs. It's something that we've looked towards and planned for a long time because of the number.
All right. Any other questions? No? Thank you, Shane.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion, council? Comments, questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Hearing none, ask for your vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
Moves us to item number 33. To entertain a motion to consider ordinance number 5623, authorizing issuance of public safety tax anticipation bonds in the principal amount not to exceed $2.4 million.
Your Honor, I'd move for consideration of ordinance number 5623.
Okay, motion second. And to kick off discussion on this, Randy, please, some background.
Yes, Your Honor. This ordinance, as you mentioned, authorizes public safety tax anticipation bonds. A big chunk of this will go to fund the radios and equipment you just authorized under the prior agenda item. Portion of that will also come from utility funds and wireless 911 funds. It also funds the city's half with the fire aerial apparatus. The other half came from the rural fire district. Additionally, it funds police in-car video cameras, dispatch furniture, and an ambulance. Total expected bond issue is $2,290,000. This is being done as a parameters ordinance wherein the final amount and interest rates will be determined later. I expect to have that firmed up probably later this week. And there are other, the reason we did it that way, there's some other issues coming to market, and by delaying marketing efforts several days, Emeritus will be better able to market our bonds and should get more favorable rates. This will be a 13-year bond issue matching the weighted average life expectancy of the equipment that's being purchased. These bonds will have a 5-year par call. Bruce Leffler from Emeritus is here this evening, and either he or I will answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Any questions? Is it 13-year bond, Randy?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
13 years?
13-year bond.
Yeah, okay. Questions, comments, council? Okay, hearing none. Short title, please, Beth.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of public safety equipment tax anticipation bonds of the city of Norfolk, Nebraska in the principal amount of not to exceed $2,400,000 for the purpose of purchasing public safety vehicles and public safety equipment and miscellaneous costs associated therewith, directing the application of the proceeds of said bonds, prescribing the form of said bonds, providing for the levy and collection of taxes to pay the same, authorizing the delivery of the bonds to the purchaser, authorizing officers of the city to make arrangements for the sale of the bonds and to designate the final terms, rates, and maturity schedule for said bonds within stated parameters, and ordering the ordinance published in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5623 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I'd move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5623 on second and third reading.
Second.
Motion second to suspend the rules. Any further discussion? None, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5623 carries on second and third.
Item 34, I would look for a motion to consider resolution number 2019-41 designating the Sunset Plaza Mall, excluding the lot containing the Target store, an enhanced employment area eligible for imposition of an occupation tax pursuant to the community development law.
Your Honor, I move consideration of resolution 2019-41.
Okay, motion second. And again, Randy, could you please give us some background on this?
Yes, this resolution will be, if you approve it, will be the second time you have designated the mall an enhanced employment area. Resolution 2018-29 was originally approved June 4th, 2018, designating the mall an enhanced employment area. At the request of the owner, the designation was repealed on December 3rd. This was necessary since the community development law requires enhanced employment area projects in an area not declared blighted and substandard result in at least 10 new employees and an investment of $500,000. Base number of employees is measured as of the end of the year preceding the EEA designation. The closure of Herberger's last year would not be possible to meet the requirement of 10 new employees if the base year remained 2017. By redesignating it in 2018, the base year will be after the Herberger's closure, and they'll be able to meet that requirement of the law. The owners propose a 1% occupation tax on essentially the same items that are subject to sales tax. They're currently looking at a March 1 effective date, and this occupation tax will be utilized for up to 20 years to pay debt service on debt issued for improvements to the interior and exterior of the mall and parking lot. Herberger's closing, a significant portion of the funding is expected to be used for leasehold improvements for new tenants. The city will collect this tax and keep 2% for administration of the program, and it'll be administered much the same as our existing food and beverage occupation tax. This is very similar to tax increment financing, except instead of using incremental property tax to pay the debt, we'll use the occupation tax to pay the debt. Debt's only payable from that occupation tax, and it's not an obligation of the city. The owners met with the mall's tenants, and they're agreeable to this occupation tax. This resolution is merely the first step in implementing the project. Additional approval is needed for the enhanced employment area agreement, the ordinance levying the occupation tax, and the ordinance authorizing issuance of the bonds. And these will be coming forward at later council meetings if you approve this resolution tonight. All representatives are here and can answer any questions you may have and discuss the project further.
Thank you, Randy. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor, Council. My name is Michael Carter, and I represent Sunset Mall. As we've discussed, or Randy did a nice job explaining, that this is, we're back just to redesignate it as we needed to undesignate it for the purposes of the taxes and the Herbergers. Again, this is just the first step, really just blighting the area, and we'll be back with the formal agreement, which I believe is 95% done with council. It's more of a council level. They're going back and forth on the details. Again, I'd entertain any questions. We're looking forward to getting the project moving, and we'll just keep working on it. And I'm here for any questions you might have, although I think I've met with most of you to at least discuss.
Mr. Carter, since it has been some time since the council took action to take the first step on this last June, can you refresh the public's memory on why you're asking this of us right now?
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about the improvements that are planned with the potential financing available through the tax.
There's really two aspects of the redevelopment. First and most importantly is the Herberger's redevelopment. And currently we're talking with 4 or 5 tenants because fortunately or unfortunately no major tenants now are in the 85 to 90,000 square foot size, which is the Herberger's currently is. So as a result of that, we need to demise that premise into 3 or 4 different bays, maybe even 5 depending on the configurations. As a part of that, most of them will want their own signage and their frontage. In addition to that, many of them will require their own docks, and it's hard to configure them all. And many of these tenants are in the same malls across America, so I mean they work cohesively together, and they kind of come as a package, although not, technically. So with that, there's a lot of requirements to redo the space, and obviously we have to separate the utilities, we have to separate the walls, there's the plumbing issues, there's some updates in codes and things like that. And obviously that is at a great deal of an expense, and unfortunately today the retail market isn't as strong as it once was, and so the rents aren't strong. So that's the step phase of where the vast majority of the dollars will be going in to do that, where they're just public improvements, but really, none of it's going to the tenants, it's all just getting to a bay that they would fit their sizing. And unfortunately, we can't give you the details yet because we're trying to piece together the 3 or 4 of them together, and how we can figure that together. And, you know, 1 or 2 have been dropping in and out and things like that. The second phase, or not the second phase, but the second issue that we'd be doing is we believe the public appearance from the outside is very important, and where the target is, even though that's not part of it in the food court area, we're looking to upgrade that and make it more appealing and to refigure the parking so people can come in. And then in addition to that, originally the bathrooms and some new tiling were in there, but we've already completed the bathrooms you know, previously done, but that was going to be part of the expenses to upgrade. And plus, there's some roofing issues over the food court and things like that that need to be addressed, which are expensive. Although, again, most of these direct funds will be going to the Herberger space, but we will also be required to put the significant additional dollars into the rest of the mall to bring it up to the same level. I mean, that's where it is. On a positive, Penny's has renewed for 5 years, which we were somewhat concerned about, but they have recently done that. So as long as they don't go into bankruptcy, we're okay. I mean, they enjoy the community and they're excited to stay in the community, which we weren't worried about the Norfolk store, but we were concerned they were going to close all their tertiary markets. But they have not. They've actually accelerated. So we viewed that as a big positive because we were concerned about that. So if anybody has questions,
So your plans do, you do have some updates and remodeling for the tenants that are there now? Because that's.
Well, not the tenants per se, but like the
They're-
interior mall, yeah.
Yeah.
The interior mall, yes. Not of it will go into a tenant
Because
space.
they're all gonna kind of get a facelift down through there, the mall itself.
The mall, well, yes, not yet. No. The tenants and their sign fascias are pretty much the tenants, and most of them, especially the national ones, have their own fascia look that we're not even, even if we told them what to do, they wouldn't like it for us to tell them what to do.
When will this 1% go into effect?
Our proposal is to start March 1st. We were going to try to get it started this year, but then we decided our plans weren't along far enough with the remodels, so just to finalize up our plans. So we wouldn't start collecting it until the 1st.
Thank you.
So to summarize, there is active recruitment. There's an active recruitment process of new tenants right now in the Herberger space.
Yes.
And some of these improvements within the mall are centered on that
Yes.
that recruitment effort. But also there are facade improvements and some parking improvements
Yes.
included
Yes.
within the overall plan.
Yes,
Correct.
yes. And the facade, again, why we have renderings, but I chose not to bring them because depending which tenants we pick, all of them don't want exterior doors, some do and some don't. And one particular one would kind of dictate to us how the facade, they would like it on the backside. Or I mean, not the backside, the side facing 275. And so unfortunately, that will determine if and when, how the facade looks. And they all, you've seen the different stores, they all have their own looks of how they want it. Some have pop-out fascias, some don't want pop-out, some have different color schemes. In addition to that, we'll be putting on a nice new digital pylon sign that'll advertise all the tenants in the mall on some kind of flashboard with some reader board issues and things like that. Although that's marketing and I'm not really involved in, or I try not to get involved in that.
Any other questions?
Probably more for Randy. The 1% occupation tax, is that what we're voting on tonight? Or would that have to be a separate vote?
This is a preliminary step to that, but there is several additional steps that will have to be taken, and there'll be a specific occupation tax ordinance that will come before you at a later date. It will actually be what levies that 1% occupation tax. This ordinance tonight merely sets the stage to do the rest of those items, and also is what sets the base share for the employment.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Carter, and the Target store is not included within this, but I think we're all aware that Target does have some plans for some updating and upgrading
Yes.
within the next year. Also, I don't know if you can comment a little bit about what Dial might be looking at in terms of outlot leases in the general property of that area. I don't know how much you can say about that, but I know there's been some discussion
we
of that
have
potential before.
We have site plans that show an additional outlot that would go on 275 outside the Herberters, and hopefully bring a new outlot that would bring the smaller type, like I'm going to call them strip center type tenants as opposed to just up down. And currently we have both the banks are involved. And one reason we've also changed the legal description to include the Wells Fargo lot in case at some point in time that develops into they're renewing their lease too. We have no reason to believe they're not renewing. But if they ever would to include, because that would be an excellent storefront, in outlots. We don't have any of these tenants, so don't take it away. But I mean, like the Verizons and Starbucks and all that are, in out front. They're not typically inline tenants. So we have a plan that we've gotten approval with the major tenants that are currently there to allow us to put in the 2 or 3 outlots. And again, a lot of it depends on the road and the structures and whether they need drive-throughs or not drive-throughs, or, well, I guess they would all want drive-throughs. Or service tenants, which would not require drive-throughs.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or comments, council? Hearing none. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, Resolution 2019-41 is adopted.
Item 35, would entertain a motion to consider approval of an engineering services contract for construction engineering with McLaury Engineering Incorporated for the Gap Paving District number 515, Square Turn Boulevard, Sidewalk District number 2019-2, and Paving District number 513, Georgia Avenue projects for a total project cost of $59,500.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Motion and second. And Steve, could you give us some background on this, please?
Mayor, Council, this would be the engineering services contract for the gap paving projects that we've established and are ready for construction. Potentially the work on Square Turn, we would anticipate may start this fall with some of the drainage work. We'll see where winter sets in before we would commit to any paving on that. Georgia Avenue, due to the proximity and interaction with the school traffic, we know we don't want to start construction on that until school is out in next summer. There will be some activity starting on that project in terms of utility, undergrounding NPPD and so forth, moving some fence and so forth, so we are ready for next year. This puts a contract in place for the design engineer of record to assist the city and or completely provide the necessary construction administration services that would be required in conjunction with a street project. In addition, right now on Georgia Avenue, we have 33 feet of right-of-way over there. To complete the project, we need 17, and just looking at the various costs, we decided it was going to be more cost-effective just to plat the middle school and then have the middle school dedicate the right-of-way to us that we would need for that. So this does include platting, a platting fee of $2,500 to plat that middle school parcel. Any questions on that?
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? Again, these projects are ones that have been talked about and planned for some time, so it's good to get them initiated. If no further discussion, council, questions or comments, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
36, Look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5624 to enact section 26-201 to provide for a stormwater fee and to amend various sections of the city code to change the two-word term stormwater to the one-word term stormwater.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of ordinance number 5624.
Motion second. Again, Steve, some background on this, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is been in the works for some time, probably better part of a year. We've been working on this and doing our background work. Several years ago, one of our peer communities in the state was audited by the EPA in terms of their compliance with the required MS4 or NPDES permit. They were found at fault, and as a function of that, there's been a lot of focus, probably about the last 3-4 years now, on this. Our permit requirements as a city over 10,000 and how we document compliance with those requirements, enforce those requirements. There was a grant that was established about that time, kind of coming out of that EPA fine. We've used that as communities to help plan what we were going to do and how we were going to comply with those requirements. Most of these communities are now implementing what's called a stormwater fee, and that's what we are proposing to do here. There are a couple models out there. This is probably the more favorable model for the community and for the residents and businesses. What this does is enact a stormwater fee of $1 per month or $2 per billing cycle for residential properties and $3 per month or $6 per billing cycle for industrial commercial accounts. That money is then collected and specifically goes into funding for compliance purposes with that our MS4 permit or our NPDES permit. Again, that permit is something that's put on us. It's required that we comply. Again, it's for all communities across the country that are over 10,000. It's not just a Nebraska thing. It's a national requirement. The other thing that this particular action item is doing then is changing our code to just get some terminology in compliance with our federal regulators. Any questions?
Which refers to the joining of the two words, stormwater, to one word.
No
stormwater.
hyphen.
Okay, all right. Just to clarify.
Steve, how long has this federal mandate or regulation been in place for us?
I can't answer that specifically, but the NPDES permits and it kind of goes back to the Clean Water Act. The NPDES permits have been around at least 30 years, maybe more. It goes back 30 years.
Oh, thank you.
Exactly when the MS4 permits were identified for communities of 10,000 and higher, I'm not exactly sure, but it's been some time.
And during that time frame, we've been able to have grants and et cetera to take care of this. Now those are, lack of a better word, all dried up.
Correct. We've kind of complied with them through our planning process a little bit, working in plans, preparing stormwater pollution prevention plans and connections with projects. Kind of the preparation side of it, the engineering side of it's been getting done. It's the monitoring. So every year we've got to go out and monitor every outfall across the community. We've got to document that. If there's work that's needed, then we need to organize that work and get some of that work done. So it's about making sure we're in compliance. It's the documentation side of compliance.
All right, thank you.
To date, there's been, what, 4 or 5 first-class cities that have established stormwater fees?
Correct. I know
Correct.
Kearney is, Fremont, Columbus, Grand Island. This would be us. There's probably more out there I'm just unaware of.
Okay.
We are part of a community consortium called H2O for Nebraska, which is where we get together and kind of brainstorm and work together as communities across the state to help define legislation and or policies that we enact at the municipal level. The other thing we're doing as a function of that group is we kind of led the effort to reconstruct our 1984 drainage design criteria manual. We upfronted the kind of the skeleton or reconstruction of that. The other communities involved across the state now are responsible for completing that document, and we are in that stage now where it's out to the other communities to complete.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any other questions or discussion, council? Okay. Hearing none, short title, please, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend various sections of the official city code to change the two-word term stormwater to the one-word term stormwater to coincide with the one-word reference used by the Environmental Protection Agency, to enact Section 26-201 to provide for a stormwater fee to be charged to all customers of city water and/or city sewer for stormwater regulatory compliance and the use, upkeep, and maintenance of the city's stormwater collection system, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5624 carries on first reading.
Yeah, and I'd move that we suspend the rules and pass this on second and third reading, as it's, has to happen anyway, so.
Motion and second to suspend the rules. No further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5624 carries on second and third.
Item 37, would entertain a motion to consider approval of change order number 2 with Rutgens Construction Incorporated for the Northeast Industrial Sanitary Sewer Extension Phase 2, Sanitary Sewer Extension District number 251, resulting in a net increase of $27,700.75.
Move for approval, Your Honor.
Motion and second, and Steve, again, some background on this, please.
Mayor, Council, this is primarily just a construction change order to keep the contract up to date with some changes that have been required out there. Probably the larger one here is we did run into a lot of water that we needed to dewater. We did set this project up with a unit price for dewatering so that we're able to modify that up or down depending on what we run into out there. So this is a $20,000 change in total, $30,000 change for dewatering. There is a $11,600 deduct for 8-inch sanitary sewer. That has to do with the service connection to NIM, to Norfolk Iron and Metal. So there was a deduct there. Likewise, there's a couple other ads, about $9,000 in ads down there for a drop manhole and the sewer service connection. So in general, it's service connection modifications and dewatering.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any questions on that? If none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 38, look for a motion to consider approval of change order number 2 with Rutgens Construction Incorporated for the Northeast Industrial Water Main Project, resulting in a net decrease of $10,276.09.
I'll
Your
make
Honor,
the
I'd
motion,
move
Your
for-
Honor.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, and Steve, once again.
Yeah, again, Mayor and Council, before you here is what I'd call just a production change order for the water extension out into the Northeast Industrial area. This is primarily due to changes at the service connection to Nucor. We made modifications to improve that connection, make it a little bit simpler, a little less costly, and so there's a net decrease here of $10,276.09.
Okay, very good. Any questions on that for Steve? If none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item number 39, I would entertain a motion to consider approval of an engineering design services contract with McLaury Engineering Incorporated for the West Michigan Avenue and 8th Street Drainage Study Project for an amount not to exceed $43,000.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Second, Your Honor.
Motion second. And Steve, could you give some background on this, please?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, at last year's 1 and 6 year program, one of our priority street segments in the community to start engineering on was Michigan Avenue, specifically 13th Street to Wood, and then 10th Street to 7th Street, as well as 8th Street from Michigan Avenue down to Highway 81. The streets in those areas are substantially deteriorated, primarily as a function of drainage or inadequate drainage through that corridor. There's going to be a reasonable amount of consideration given to just how we get rid of that drainage down there at the south end, whether we connected it back into Corporation Gulch or a new system underneath Highway 275. What this is the drainage portion of the design. Kind of starts us off so we can figure out how we're going to deal with the water before we start spinning our wheels on the design side. Generally, those two projects were identified for potentially being constructed together, or depending on how we look at funding and staging of those constructed in individual contracts. As we went through the 1 and 6 year program and specifically designed the bridge, identified the potential for a bridge replacement at First Street, we did delay those projects. We will be writing for a build grant for the First Street project, anticipate to get that funded through the build grant. So then those dollars would come back and be reallocated towards construction for Michigan Avenue and for 8th Street. But this is the starting point.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, it's good to see this first step being taken on a much-needed street work project in that area. Any questions for Steve or comments, Council? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 40, look for motion to consider approval of change order number 2 with Elkhorn Paving Construction Incorporated for the concrete improvements 2019-1 Prospect Avenue, 27th Street to Ridgeway Avenue, and the 1300 block of Monroe Avenue, project resulting in a net increase of $6,400.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Motion second, and Steve, background on this, please.
Part of this change order is the reconstruction of a old drop inlet. It was a brick drop inlet, and it was to the extent in degradation that it needed to be replaced. And so, kind of following the concept of once in, once out, we go in, do everything we need to do so we don't have to go back and interrupt that neighborhood. We decided it was in the neighborhood's interest to go ahead and replace that. So that's $3,200 there. There was also a large tree on one lot there on the northeast corner of 27th and Prospect. We had conversation during design about trying to keep that and work around that, but in the end, both the landowner and the city agreed that it was in the best interest of that landowner to get rid of that tree as a function of this project. It would have died off in the next couple of years anyway, and we would have been back there taking it out. So,
Okay, any questions on that? If not, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 41, look for motion to consider approval of amendment number 1 to the engineering services contract with JEO Consulting Group Incorporated for the Norfolk Johnson Park Improvements Project for a net increase of $19,000.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second.
Motion second, and Steve, once more, please.
Mayor, Council, couple different things going on here. One of these items in this contract is $12,500 for conceptual site illustrations. This would be funded by the Riverfront Committee that's working with us on that project. Currently, we've identified 5 potential illustrations that would come to a cost of about $8,200. Two of the higher overhead aerials at $2,600 apiece and 3 pedestrian level. And those would be the ones that we would start off with. The purpose of those is to be able to provide to citizens kind of a perspective of what this looks like when it's going to be done. And then also to use those perspectives to help in the fundraising portion of the project. So we're anticipating that this would turn into a very substantial rate of return for us on the project. Again, we're getting the change order includes some additional perspectives depending on what's developed in these first 5 and kind of how the project develops. We may want to do 1 or 2 more down the road. So this just establishes our ability to move that forward at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
The task A2 is $1,000 as we are looking at some other grants to chase and just potential, I want to say acquiring, that's probably the wrong word, but we're working with the landowners adjacent to the river to gain city control over the land up to the bank. By having up from bank to bank across the river under the city's name, that qualifies us for some substantial grants out there, specifically in the land and water side. So this $1,000 is just to have the engineers work with city staff as we look more on the upstream side, up along Hennessing Foods, all the way up along between there and First Street, that any potential negative impacts of this project. And I shouldn't say negative impacts, but just impacts that we want to be aware of. There are some large curves up in there. I know there's a couple old oxbows up in there, and so we want to understand what's going to be going on as water elevations are increased for different events that might occur and so forth. The other that's the $5,500 portion. That's task A3. Task A2 was staking. So the hydraulic review of the project has pretty much been completed by Riverwise, and I wanted to understand what the water elevation was going to be upstream and downstream from about 500 feet downstream of Norfolk Avenue all the way up to First Street, so that again, potentially working with those landowners and understanding where that water elevation is at about 5 key points along that route. I had them go out and stake that.
Any questions? And Steve, again, a portion of the cost of the resource material for the improvement plans will come from the private Riverfront Development Group.
Correct.
Which will allow them to initiate a fundraising effort for the larger project. Okay. Okay. Any further discussion, comments, council? If none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Last but not least, item number 42, would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5625 to amend City Code Section 24-164 to restrict parking on both sides of Tahazuka Road from 13th Street to 15th Street, both sides of 15th Street from Tahazuka Road to 575 feet north of Monroe Avenue, and both sides of 16th Street from Monroe Avenue to 1,150 feet north of the north curb line of Monroe Avenue.
Your Honor, I'd move for consideration of ordinance number 5625.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. And Chief Miller, can you help us make sense of all that, please?
Mayor and City Council, the area that we're referring to is on the south part of town, west of Highway 81 and south of the viaduct. It's a heavily industrial area with semis being the main mode of transportation. There's 2 truck stops. It's the main entrance to AWG, Wizpac. There's a tire repair, truck repair, a lot of truck traffic in that area. And this conversation came up at the request of a couple truck drivers who were coming in and out of there and having a hard time negotiating some of the streets. What was occurring is that there was vehicles, primarily semis, parking on the roadway. And while semis can't park on the roadway anyway, on any streets, we evaluated that and to address their concerns. Monroe Avenue is already no parking through that entire area. And as we looked at it with the addition of a second truck stop and AWG using that and the increased truck traffic, we looked at it being best to restrict all parking on those streets so the trucks can meet both directions without any problems. We directly contacted every single business down in that area. Several of them recognized and agreed that there was a problem with vehicles parking and making it hard for trucks to get through. Everyone that we talked to, there wasn't anybody against, some of them were neutral, but there wasn't anybody against restricting parking. So we put together the ordinance just to restrict parking in the entire area to match what is already on Monroe with the other side streets and stuff that are in that area. And any questions?
Seems to make sense. Look like any questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
No further discussion. Council, short title, please, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 24-164, the official city code, to restrict parking on both sides of Tahazuga Road from 13th Street to 15th Street, both sides of 15th Street from Tahazuga Road to 575 feet north of the north curb line of Monroe Avenue, and both sides of 16th Street from Monroe Avenue to 1,150 feet north of the north curb line of Monroe Avenue, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5625 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third reading.
Second.
Motion and second to suspend the rules. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5625 carries on second and third.
Okay. That concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. Good evening.